What's up everyone, Nick here. Sorry about being just audio. I just found out I literally have the hardest time talking to a camera alone. But anyway, since we're in a mid-season break, I felt the need to make something to fill the void. A video I've been looking to make for a while. My top 20 favorite Pokemon. I have not played Pokemon since Yellow, and I only picked up X last December, so I've made a few rules here. First, only final evolutions are in this list, but all previous forms count. Second, no two Pokemon of the same set. And lastly, these are based on my personal experience with them or their appeal to me and their design, so these are my personal favorite, but not my best. Some of these I don't even use. So anyway, here we go. Number 20. Gengar. A dream-eating shadow. What more can be said about this one? Gengar's fast, hits hard, and Matt's Gengar, anyone's really, is a pain in the ass. But what really put Gengar on this list is really his evolution before this, Haunter. I never really used Haunter, never raised one so much, but I did like his design much more. The floating hands, with the detached head, with the angry trickster smile, way more better than some fat guy Shadow. Number 19. Lapras. I find cryptids to be fascinating. The myths and legends behind them, the possibility of their existence at some point in history, or even today, so of course I would gravitate to the one based on Nessie. I never really raised a Lapras for myself, but I always liked its design. Number 18. Porygon Z. Porygon was one of my favorites back in Generation 1, a digital Pokemon back when the internet and computer sciences were still in their growing stage and had possibilities we couldn't imagine. Then when I played X, it had two evolutions. Porygon 2 was okay, slicker version of the original, but oh man, Porygon Z. Take Porygon 2 and give it a virus. For this being a digital Pokemon, it was an interesting concept for me as is. The idea of giving it a virus and it glitches out? Again, one of those I didn't really raise, but I can't help but like the design. Number 17. Dewgong. Back in Generation 1, I remember when I first reached the Elite Four, Lorelei being the first one to be fought and Dewgong being the first Pokemon she threw out. I always liked Dewgong for this reason. It felt like the first step in the last series of steps on your journey to become the champion. Plus, I think it's cute. Number 16. Malamar. Any fan of H.P. Lovecraft needs one of these in their collection. It has a design similar to an Elder thing, and the way it evolves from NK is probably the most mentally entertaining for me. At level 30, as it levels up, turn the system upside down. I wanted this thing just for that alone. Then, to have it look like one of the most famous creatures in the Lovecraft mythos, that just made it so much better for me. Number 15. Greninja. Greninja wasn't even on this list originally. He just stole Shedinja's spot and I was too lazy to reorder this list while I was editing. First off, I hated Greninja. It was the bane of my existence in battle for a while. Then I got to raising one. What made me raise one was when I got a Feroki with the hidden ability Protein through Wonder Trade. When I got a closer look at its stats, it had 5 perfect EVs. This ability was the reason why it was my bane. The constant change of types made it impossible for me to get a good hit on it. I wanted to turn this in on my opponents. The near-perfect IVs were just icing on the cake. Needless to say, he now holds a spot on my team. You'll see the others later. Not to mention he kind of grew on me with this design. Number 14. Jolteon. And now we get to my favorite evolution. Jolteon was the funnest of all the evolutions for me to raise back in Generation 1's. And I don't like electric types that much. They don't seem to show the true danger of electricity that Jolteon can without being over the top that it's goofy. Looking at you, Electivire. The spiky fur and the sharp dark eyes just make this thing look badass. Number 13. Xerneas. Xerneas made it on this list for a very particular reason. Remember how I said that before X, the last game I played was Yellow? For those of you that don't recall, the original games, the legendaries were purely optional to capture. You could go through the entire thing without capturing Articuno, Zapdos, or Moltres, and you couldn't even get Mewtwo without becoming champion. So Xerneas was the very first legendary I encountered through the storyline of the game. It really made the series shine for me again. Plus, I can't help but think that the design is really pretty. Number 12. Absol. Absol has a great design, and its Pokédex entry made me want to raise one to max level. It detects impending disaster, and it attempts to warn people. However, its appearance scares people and makes them think that disaster is because of it. It's a really tragic story, and I'm a total sucker for those. The fact that it's attached to a white dog creature with a horn on its head makes it that much better for me. Plus it gets wings and it's mega. Number 11. Meloetta. I love to sing. I enjoy dancing. Meloetta is a Pokemon that focuses on both. No further explanation needed. Moving on. Number 10. Keldeo. Look at my channel name. What are most of the videos based around? What's this Pokemon look like? This one was bound to show up here and everyone knows it. Maybe expected a little higher though. But all joking aside, Keldeo was a fun one to raise. One of my friends gave me Keldeo and Meloetta, and although Meloetta was already trained, Keldeo wasn't. I really like training him. His stats are nice, and come on, it's a pony Pokemon. A Ponymon, if you will. Gotta give it credit for that. Number 9. Volcarona. When I first saw an NPC trainer throw out a Volcarona, I knew I wanted one. For lack of a better phrase, I flew to it like a moth to a flame. Well, while I hear people complain that it looks ugly, I honestly think that Volcarona has one of the best designs out of all the bug types. Not to mention the dual fire type is a very welcome break from the bug flying pairing in most of the final forms of bugs. There's not many of those. Number 8. Mewtwo. What can I say about Mewtwo that hasn't been said countless times before? This guy is the Pokemon definition of badass. When I was getting my first game after over 10 years and my DS, I knew I had to get X for that Mewtwo's Mega form. Even though Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire released just a couple weeks prior, I was insistent on getting Mewtwo. Too bad he wasn't more of a challenge to catch in X as he was in Yellow. I'll get to that one later. Number 7. Articuno. My favorite of the legendary birds goes to the Ice type. I love the design. Although I live in a city that spends about 5 or 6 months of the year in freezing cold temperatures, you would think I would hate anything having to do with ice and snow. But if winter was as beautiful and tame as this bird all the time, I don't think I would mind it as much. Number 6. Kangaskhan. Now at this point we're starting to get to the rest of my personal favorites that actually made it into my team, and in the number 6 slot is Kangaskhan. Although not the coolest or prettiest of designs, I do like the protective parent aspect of this Pokemon. She doesn't even like you petting the baby in Pokemon on me. When I saw the Mega Evolution for her was the baby growing up, I just had to raise one. Although I don't use the Mega too much, when I do, it's always nice to see the child growing up. Number 5. Aegislash. Originally, I wasn't planning on raising an Aegislash. But when I got to the point of the game where I needed full swipe to catch Pokemon, it came down to very few Pokemon that I had that can learn the move. And Honedge was the one I picked. I thought it and Doublade were decent, nothing too special. Then I used a Dusk Stone on Doublade, and I was hooked. The stance changeability and the switching between extreme defense and extreme offense is a really nice touch to this Pokemon, and its Steel Ghost typing is just incredible. You could see why this guy holds the spot on my team. Number 4. Gardevoir. Beautiful, powerful, and loving, Gardevoir has it all. Its Pokédex entry says that it will create a black hole to protect its trainer. That alone makes Gardevoir irreplaceable, since loyalty like that is impossible. Its stats are awesome, the Psychic Fairy typing is great, and the moveset is so variable, it's hard to predict what they'll do. Number 3. Lucario. The Anubis Fighter, as I like to call mine. Lucario is a visually appealing Pokemon to me from the moment I've seen one. The aura reading lore behind Lucario is probably one of my favorite ideas in the Pokemon world. Although he's no longer on my team, Greninja replacing him for type preference, I just like seeing a Pokemon with abilities like this. Number 2. Charizard. My first Pokemon game was Red. I chose my starters based on the cover of the game I was playing. Ergo, I chose Charmander. This one made it to my team now out of all the Kanto starters. Outside of nostalgia, he has good stats and a decent moveset. Just gotta watch out for rocks. And now, here are some honorable mentions. Blastoise. Red was my first game, Blue was my second, I had an aunt that liked Squirtle, so I always liked raising one. Kabutops, my favorite fossil Pokemon. So vicious. Pre-evolution Kabuto is one of my preferred designs, but the twin scythe hands of Kabutops makes him terrifying. Ditto. It can be anything on this list. It gets past. Vespiquen. Love the design, don't like bees that much, but the challenge of getting this one and the overall design of it makes it appealing. Carcosta. No reason for this one, I just like turtles. And lastly, number 1, Pidgeot. As I'm sure with a lot of people that played Red or Blue, my first catch was Pidgey. Instead of replacing him, as I found more battle-suited Pokemon to train, I always kept mine around. Each time, he became the star of my team back in the day, and the first Pidgey I caught in X is still on my team now. Back in Yellow, Pidgeot was ultimately the one that managed to help me catch Mewtwo, after everyone else fainted. Also, I always liked the design. This bird was clearly made for hunting. Hell, it's mentioned hunting Magikarp in its Dex entries. I know there's better bird Pokemon out there, and I don't care. Pidgey was the first capture I ever made in the Pokemon world, and I form a bond with each Pidgeot I raise because of this fact. This is why Pidgeot will always be my favorite Pokemon. And that's my top 20 favorite Pokemon. Hit that like button if you want to see more Pokemon related content here, and in the comments, let me know, if Pokemon existed, what job would you take? Would you be a breeder, a professional trainer, a performer, or would you just work in one of the stores and help traveling trainers? Anyway, hope you enjoyed the video, and I'll talk to you next time.